So I live in Tennessee, and I recently started building an addition on the house. Came out back from the weekend after watching the insulators work on my house. Got the shop entirely insulated and the addition insulated, and discovered that the insulation looks nothing like what I would have ever seen having grown up in Alaska. I noticed that these are 2x6 walls. The insulation is pushed almost to where it's only about 3 inches or so thick in each of the plenums, which compress down everywhere. Over the tops of each of the wires, every place there's a wire or plumbing, they've got the insulation overlaid, not plumb up, and then there's nothing behind there. Now, when you see it like this, what that does is it builds a huge space underneath there, back behind each of those connections, where you're going to have moisture and things like that build up behind there. Gives a place for bugs and critters to live, and also it drastically reduces the R factor, or the resistance factor, of your walls, in order to ensure that you're not getting the factor. So if you're buying R19 insulation, what you're really installing in a situation like this is probably more like R8. Which means you've wasted the money on your insulation, as well as you could be wasting, theoretically, as much as 50% a month in electric costs. And that's obviously not what you want. So I've gone through, pulled all that insulation out. Now you notice this is unfaced batting, and the reason is because this is a brick building. So in this particular region of the country, you want to make sure that if you're bricking on the outside, you always give a place for that moisture to go. In this case, the moisture is going to come into the structure. So you've got a brick layer on the outside, a brick veneer, then you've got a moisture barrier on the outside of the OSB, and then you've got the OSB and then the studs, and what you're looking at coming in. So we do need the moisture to come back in here. So you can either use craft faced walls, which is the paper, the craft backed, or you can use unfaced. It's really up to you. The craft back's a little bit easier to install, and that's actually what I've got upstairs. But if you'll notice down here, this stuff looks a lot different. You'll see there's very few gaps, and even where there is gaps, this stuff is pulled out much further. You can look down the wall and you actually see insulation all the way down there, whereas over on the walls that you haven't worked on, you just see these huge weird pockets. So if you're going to do this, also notice that behind all these outlets, they haven't cut anything in here. I'm not wearing a mask right now, so I'm coughing a bit, sorry. Normally you wear a mask when you're doing the installation. So what you want to do in this is pull back, and use a knife. It works a little bit easier, but you pull back this piece here, and you pull some of that out, and then you want to pull this insulation all the way out here to the edge, all the way around the edges of those things. There's a lot of energy that's usually lost through these electric outlets, so you want to make sure there's insulation behind it, you want to make sure there's insulation beside it, and then for each of these pieces, they go in where the wire goes. Instead of just shoving it over the top like these insulators have done, you want to take this insulation and you want to separate it. Oh, I'm going to cover up the camera for a second when I do that. So I've split the bat like so. Now you take these pieces, and you can split it the entire section if you want, or just cut it down if it's a longer piece. Then you take this and you shove it behind your wires. And this does a couple of things. Number one, if you freeze, that wall isn't going to freeze inside there. Number two, there's no way that a critter can live back there. A highway to run on. Now you take your second piece of the bat and you set it over the top. And it runs right down to the outlet. And notice, and now I pull all this insulation back out to the front, just like so. And you notice the difference between the two sides. So now, instead of it just being compressed, where I've just taken this and shoved it up like this, this is what it looked like when I got here. The one on the right is compressed, 4 or 5 inches of stud exposed, big compressed holes, big gaps. And then in the left, it's wrapped right around that electrical box, nice and tight. You can see the difference there on the left versus the right. And in that case, the reason there's two outlets to the side is this is a welder outlet. It's with 10 gauge wire, and that's a regular 20 amp circuit. So there you go. We're going to go upstairs real quick and just show you what the difference looks like on the craft as well, in case you have craft installation. So if you can see up here, we get the same problem. Now this is only 2x4 construction because we're up higher and we didn't need to go with a 2x6 up here. We've got plenty of insulating factor. Normally with an R13 plus the brick veneer, we shouldn't have had an issue, but if you look here, you can actually see all the way to the exterior wall right there. That's really, really bad. Around the electrical outlets, this is what it looked like when I got here. You can see that you can actually see exterior wall in there. That's terrible. This is absolutely atrocious. If you see this in your house, you make sure that you get those guys to fix it for you. What you need to do to fix it, again, is this insulation should be cut. There should be a small piece shoved back behind this outlet so that it's back there, and then these sides pulled up here on either side. And then you notice, you can see the studs in here. That's the first sign, if you look at an installation job, that it was done poorly. You should not see the studs. All of this paper has a backing. It's supposed to be pulled over to the side like this, over to the side like this, and then overlapped, and then stapled. So you're going to staple down this edge, and then staple it over. So I've already started that process in this room. You can see, you're not seeing the studs. The only place you're seeing a stud here is right here beside the windows. There's actually 3 studs. So you can see that one in the middle. So that's the difference. See how that's installed correctly, stapled, and it looks right. That may seem like a small thing to somebody. Having grown up in Alaska, it was absolutely critical. You wanted to make sure your energy bill was as low as possible. Here in Tennessee, you would think that would be just as much of a concern, where you're paying $300 and $400 a month for an average home to air condition it. Well, you shouldn't be paying $300 or $400 a month. If you have a $300 or $400 a month electric bill, it's probably because your installation was installed like this. So if you have installation installed like this, make sure that you get it fixed. Get your installers to do it correctly. If not, go out there and do it yourself. It's not complicated, and your electric bill is going to thank you for it. You're talking, on an average home, it could be $50 to $100 a month in electrical savings, not to mention the moisture problems and all types of other issues that you could be having by leaving those gaping holes. Thanks for watching.